Hello, my name is Brian Freeman. I'm the Chief of Mission Management here at Bluegrass Army Depot. And today I'm here to talk with you about Stephen Covey's habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. But before we begin, I want you to think back. I want you to think way back to those black and white days of yesteryear, back when you were a kid. Did you and your favorite family ever camp out? Well, mine's did. And if your experience was like mine, then there was lots of fresh food and fresh air and fun times and hiking and swimming. I mean, you guys had a blast, right? So now fast forward 20 to 30 years. Now you're an employee here at Bluegrass Army Depot. You're a parent. You know, you've been working hard. It's summertime and you've saved up some leave. And now you want to take your family camping. You want them to experience the same thing that you had growing up. So, in your mind, you create a picture of a perfect camping vacation, just like you had growing up, with lots of great food, fresh air, hiking, fishing, biking. Now, before you even set out on this vacation, since in a sense you've already created that vacation because it exists in your imagination. Beginning with the end in mind is based on the principle that all things are created twice. There's a mental or first creation, then there's a second physical creation. Okay, let's return to that ideal vacation that you just imagined. So this picture in your mind is literally the first creation. Okay, so with that in mind, let's set out and begin some planning. Okay, so you figure out where you want to go for vacation, how much you want to spend, the best way to travel. You start making reservations. In short, you plan it all out. But then you get a phone call. It's your Aunt Betsy. You end up talking about the vacation plans, and she's happy to hear of them, but then she begins hinting that she wants to come. Well, she is family, so no problem. You'll make room for one more. But then there's an issue. She hates camping, and she wants to go on a Disney World vacation instead. I mean, that's her dream. She wants it so bad that she's even willing to cover the cost for the tickets. In order to keep the peace, you decide to go along with it. And so you begin all over again from scratch, and you completely convert your camping vacation into a Disney World vacation. Finally, you go on vacation, and the second creation begins. As you can see, sometimes the second creation doesn't look like the first. Disney World is known as the happiest place on earth. But clearly, these are not happy campers, pun intended. Before we dive into what happened, let's digress a bit and briefly discuss leadership versus management. In terms of leadership and management, the first creation is where leadership should begin. The second creation is where you should find management. Leadership addresses the question of whether you are doing the right things. Management ensures you are doing things right. Now, if we were a logging company, we would concern, from a management perspective, we would be concerned about how many logs per day were being cut. Okay, you would be concerned about the number of man hours per tree being spent, okay, etc. Leadership, on the other hand, would ask the question, the fundamental question of, are we even in the right forest? Now, when you consider the vacation scenario from a management perspective, there were a lot of things that actually went right. It appears that they arrived safely at Disney. It looks like they were well fed, properly hydrated. They appear to be well accessorized for a proper Disney vacation. I'm sure they were wearing sunblock with an SPF rating of at least 30, and their sunglasses provided 100% UVA UVB protection. The reason why they don't appear happy is because of a leadership failure, not a management problem. The parents allow this family's first creation to be hijacked by someone else's first creation. In our personal lives, if you don't have a firm grasp of your own self-awareness, of your own first creation, you empower third parties or circumstances to take you down an alternative path and define that first creation for you. One of the best ways to document and establish your own self-definition is to create a personal mission statement or philosophy or creed. It focuses on what you want to be, on what you want to achieve, and the values upon which your life is based. It is the central basis for every decision you make in the midst of changing emotions and circumstances. In a sense, it's similar to having your own personal constitution. Here's an example of a mission statement written by Rolf Kerr. Succeed at home first. Seek and merit divine help. Never compromise with honesty. Remember the people involved. Hear both sides before judging. Obtain counsel of others. Defend those who are absent. Be sincere yet decisive. Develop one new proficiency a year. Plan tomorrow's work today. Hustle while you wait. Maintain a positive attitude. Keep a sense of humor. Be orderly in person and work. Do not fear mistakes. Fear only the absence of creative, constructive, and corrective responses to those mistakes. Facilitate the success of subordinates. Listen twice as much as you speak. Concentrate all abilities and efforts on the task at hand, not worrying about the next job or promotion. Now, by this point, you're thinking, how do I write my own mission statement? Well, I'm here to help with that. Okay, so in order to construct a personal mission statement, let's begin by looking at this diagram. It's called the circle of influence. The arrows are known as life support factors. Security is your sense of self-worth. Guidance is your source of direction. Wisdom is your perspective on life. Power is your capacity to act. The center is composed of our most basic paradigms. It is the lens to which we see the world. Now, ideally, your center should be based on rock-solid principles. Principles are deep fundamental truths that are constant and don't generally change with time. They don't react to anything. They don't get mad, and they aren't here one day and gone the next. One of the reasons why our national constitution has stood the test of time is because of the principles it is based on. One such principle is all men are created equal. A good mission statement is based on real principles and not something that you can generally write overnight. It takes deep introspection and may require several revisions before you get it right. But once you do, it allows you to optimize the wisdom, security, guidance, and power that emanates from your life. Once this is done, you have a compass for navigating the challenges of life. Before every decision, you first consider your mission statement. Doing so allows you to make choices that are beneficial in the ways that really matter to you the most. Essentially, it empowers you to live life more deliberately, maximizing your effectiveness. This is the destination of habit number 2, the end state we should all reach for. Now, the reality is, however, that's just not where most of us are at. The reason why is because our lives are not based on principles. Instead, we have alternative centers. Okay, let's look at some of those. Okay, so and this, before we begin looking at those, I actually wanted to show you this alternative center here. And so one of the things I wanted to point out is the diminished life support factors. Okay? And so the point here is that centers that are based on anything other than solid principles will result in diminished life support factors. Okay, so the first alternative center I want to talk about is being spouse-centered. Now, at first, it might seem reasonable and healthy, to be centered around your spouse. However, being spouse-centered leads to strong emotional dependencies, which make you vulnerable to the moods, feelings, and actions of your spouse. In order to compensate, we feel the need to protect ourselves through cutting humor, sarcasm, or criticism. And of course, that just snowballs into other problems. You can tell whether you're spouse-centered by looking at your behavior. For example, do you experience a deep degree of resentment whenever you and your spouse disagree? Is your decision-making largely dictated by your spouse's preference? Or is your power to act limited by weaknesses in your spouse? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are likely spouse-centered. Okay, here's another one. Can you guess what this one is? That's right, it's being money-centered. Now, there's nothing wrong with having money. However, allowing your self-worth to be determined by your net worth makes you vulnerable to anything that can affect your bank statement. Additionally, money-centered folks often devalue family or other priorities, forgetting that there are some things that money simply just can't buy. So let me ask you, are all of your decisions made in terms of dollars and cents? Must all of your initiatives have a profit motive? Is money making the lens through which you see the world? If any of these ring true for you, you could be money-centered. Okay, one last one. All right, let's look at being self-centered. Now, selfishness violates the values of most people. The lack of interdependence precludes opportunities to engage in healthy interactions with others where there are mutual benefits. Like the Dead Sea in Israel, it accepts and never gives. It leaves you stagnant without life. So, is your view of the world determined by how events and circumstances affect only you? Do you make decisions solely on what feels good or what's in it for yourself? Do you generally act on your own without the benefit of interdependence? If so, you may be self-centered. Again, time will not allow me to cover all the alternative centers covered in the book. However, I've provided enough to where you should be able to understand the inferiority of having a center based on anything other than sound principles. So naturally, you may be wondering how to make that transition, how to become properly centered. Well, that's going to require a paradigm shift. And to begin that journey, we're going to have to first visit your brain. Now, studies have shown that the left hemisphere of your brain operates differently from the right side. The left side is logical, it's verbal, it's time-bound, it's analytical, meaning that it tends to break things apart. It's sequential. The right side, however, is intuitive, it's creative, it's time-free, synthetical, meaning that it tends to assemble things. It's also simultaneous. Now, since beginning with the end in mind is at least initially an exercise of the imagination, practicing habit number 2 heavily utilizes the right brain. The more we're able to draw upon the powerful right brain capacity, the more clearly we can visualize a picture of what we wish to accomplish and become in life. According to Dr. Charles Garfield, almost all world-class athletes and other peak performers are visualizers. Before they perform it, they see it, they feel it, they experience it. They literally begin with the end in mind. You can even use the power of your right brain to unearth deeply embedded values that you may not be aware of. Now, I want you to imagine that you are attending a funeral, but not any funeral. Somehow you are quietly witnessing your own funeral. As they read the obituary, what kind of things would you want to have said about you? How would you want to be remembered? What accomplishments? What are the roles associated with those accomplishments? How about relationships? How would you have affected the lives of others? If you perform this exercise sincerely and thoughtfully, you will undoubtedly uncover those things in which you treasure most. You'll think in terms much larger than today and tomorrow. For the very first time, you will realize that your life is larger than just working, paying bills, taking your kids to baseball practice, etc. It's so easy to lose yourself in a barrage of activities without pursuing what's truly important to you. Now, with that imagery fresh in your head, use your left brain to begin writing those things down. Take note of the values that you see at work. Describe the various activities you see, and from them form a mission statement that is expressed in terms of the important roles in which you operate. Next, start writing some long-term goals that you wish to accomplish in each role. If these goals are an extension of your mission, they will harmonize with the correct principles, which will give you greater power to achieve them. They are your goals, not someone else's. They reflect your deepest values, your sense of mission, and provide guidance as you live out your destiny. Now, as I conclude this presentation, I want to encourage you to obtain a copy of this book and read habit number 2 for yourself. Although I've touched on the main points, it's certainly worth your time to read this book in its entirety. Thank you for listening and have a great day. Army Strong.